Good afternoon, everyone. You've seen the massive floods across China, Zhengzhou, massive releases from all dams to avoid overtopping. If it's this flooded in the cities, moving out to the suburbs, factory zones, countryside, farm country, everything's submerged. We've seen it last year, the exact same areas. Corn production, wheat production, peanut production, same areas that are flooded again this year. So here's the question. Where's China going to get the food they need so there's not starvation in that country? Because when you look at the agricultural suppliers, Australia wheat exports pulled back, United States atrocious in its wheat and grain this year, and Brazil with a record cold eliminating so many of their crops. Winter wheat, 30 to 40 year lows in production. Spring wheat, the exact same. Haven't seen lows like this since the 1980s or even 1970s. Jupiter's just swung past the Earth into this new magnetic field that's going to be forming until October of 2024. You have to ask yourself how fast it's going to intensify. But what we're looking at with this grand solar minimum is a 400-year repeat in history. Cataclysm cycle is in play. Inflation in the U.S. will climb between 6 and 9% by year's end, said Steve Hanke, who served on Ronald Reagan's Council of Economic Advisors. Said the rapid growth in money supply, work fueling asset prices. But the negative side to this, the rise in inflation in 2021 has been caused 100% by growth of the money supply. When inflation spikes, commodities like gold, silver, lumber, real estate have historically surged. Learn how simple it is to add physical gold and silver to your portfolio ahead of the rise in inflation and predicted price rises. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA. Call 1-800-356-4470 and get a free investor guide today. And the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 5 years in a row from 2016 until present. Click the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video. And for those of you following my channel here for the last couple of years, I put these collapse of Chinese dynasties together with drops in temperature for the classical period of the end of a dynasty on the Greenland Ice Core Survey Project gold standard for global temperatures. And we start to see the Wolf minimum overlaid with the Sporer minimum, the Mondra minimum, and the collapse of the Ming dynasty, the Yuan dynasty, Southern Song Jin dynasty. So I started to put together the maps. And this is 2017, the areas I was calling for crop losses to absolutely devastate China. Red circles was my call in 2017. Let me see where that center circle lies. Oh, the same exact areas that have been flooded, that have taken out China's food production for the second year in a row. Zhengzhou, that central area below the Three Gorges Dam. Yellow River map, circled in black, Zhengzhou, Kaifeng, Anyang, also experiencing massive floods with Luoyang off to the west a little bit, Jinan, and all the way up to Tianjin next to Beijing experiencing floods. Massive, incredible amounts of water. So the central government was forced to, in the middle of the night, not warn anybody, and release all the dams at the same time. The amount of flooding is truly unsurpassed. Now, they're trying to blame it on a once-in-a-500-year rainstorm, but how about nobody was warned when they opened all the floodgates and dams were overtopping? That might have had a little something to do with it. But images into the cities, 5 deep, 6 feet deep in some areas, central business district. And the cars, well, they're boats at the moment. Flooded city, Henan, Hunan, Shanxi. And it just goes on and on. And now with the typhoon landing, Zhejiang also got hit, Fujian partially flooded, and it just continues this deluge of water from the skies. Now looking at the history of floods in China, If we go to Hubei province back in 1931, we'll see some of the same things. There's an enormous amount of water that comes down. This yellow river is called the Huanghe for a reason. It would flood with the yellow silt, and that's what would bring nutrition back to the farm fields every year. Now, modern irrigation has stopped that, so where's the water going? Into reservoirs. And when they're going to overtop, the government releases it. So here's something to put into perspective. Now, I understand that it was once in a 500-year event, but that's expected. Grand solar minimum, once in a 400-year repeating cycle, or once in a 2,000-year repeat this time. But the amount of water in that city, before being submerged, this is the highway that is about 3.5 miles running under the city, before being submerged, after being submerged on the right. Now, people were trapped in these cars down here, obviously, because when you're looking at something that's, 3 miles long underground like this, and suddenly water starts pouring in, as far as you can see, it was one massive traffic jam for almost, again, 3+ miles underground, and then the water filled in. You can see on the far right, they began to pump this out, and apparently, I guess only 5 people drowned during the event, according to Chinese media. And the images of the waterfall-esque pouring in through the city, that's the amount of water that was filling that tunnel. In a matter of minutes, it went from what you saw in those previous photos to full. Like, I don't know how, even if you were an expert Olympic swimmer, how you would have gotten out of that. But wherever you look across the East Coast central area of China, massive floods coming off of cliff faces turning into waterfalls. Then you start moving out of the city centers right out into the manufacturing district, factory zones, special economic zones. But all I see is water. And then I look at electrical stations underwater. And even in the periphery towns, which they would call third-tier cities, fourth-tier cities. Beijing's a first-tier city, for example. When you get out in third-tier cities, you're talking way out in the countryside. A city with 1 million people. And then look at the water depths in there. That's going up, 2 floors up. And then we saw the dams collapse. There are 3 in total so far that are known. Inner Mongolia was the first cascading. Heirloom earthen dams. And then you can see the Tianjin flows there as well coming out. That's below Beijing off to the coastal area. But then Hebei also. And it kept going. And this water has to go somewhere. Once it starts cascading, that's the thing. It needs to go somewhere. What we're looking at here is cropland. And it's not stopping. They're forecast for more rain through the next couple of weeks, and this is not stopping. Their Army Corps is in there blasting, ripping away river edges to allow this water to flow. You're looking at more farmland here. And more cities underwater. And this is where we get way right at the cusp of countryside and farming country. Once you get into these 2-level, 3-level buildings, we're getting way out in the countryside. So the sky is falling. These Chinese farmers with the pigs, apparently 30% of all the pigs are gone in Henan. And then we start to see images like this taken from drone footage where that was the year's crops, the year's food supply for China. Not only meat, but it looks like grain, corn there as well. But once you get outside, this is a picture of Henan province, flooding as well. Everything as far as you can see from Inner Mongolia all the way over to the coast is just one gigantic flood zone like we saw last year. This is in Shanxi. We saw this last year too. And this is in Anyang and Henan. That was on the previous larger map. But this is China's food going into the drink once again. This is a 2.0 from last year. Now, what did we learn when we saw these devastating scenes of crops again and again and again? Food inavailability. This is where Xi Jinping started the Clean Plate campaign and passed the laws that you can only have one dish for one person in a restaurant. So if you had 4 people, you could only order 4 dishes in a restaurant. Before, you might order 8. But food is a huge issue in China. Now, we know where the location is, central there. Corn production. So these same flooding areas are approximately 15 to 20% of all corn in China produced. But then if we look over the wheat production, this is where it gets incredibly hectic. We're looking at about 40% of all Chinese wheat in these same flood zone areas. But here I'm making a bold call. Peanut prices up, because if we look in these same areas, that's over 50% of China's peanut production. And if you've ever visited China, amazing country to travel around, by the way, or the sesame oil and peanut oil used in a lot of dishes, peanut used in a lot of dishes as peanut powder. So peanut is a mainstay inside the diet. Peanut prices up globally. I'm calling it already. So once you see all these images that I took the time and was fascinated by seeing these floods on how all-encompassing they are for this grand solar minimum intensification, where's China getting its food from? That's the question. Where's it getting its food from? Because when you look at the United States, we are going to be in some trouble ourselves trying to maintain our own internal demand. Australian exports down. EU, they're barely at break even. And Brazil, we see this massive cold going on along all the way over to Argentina, affecting the corn, the wheat, the soy, the sugar, and the coffee. This came from Aura, pulled a couple of their charts. USA winter wheat, good to excellent condition. There's not. It's a 70% reduction in good to excellent condition, and putting us at 30 to 40-year lows in wheat production for America this year. That's for the winter wheat, though. Spring wheat's a little different, bringing us back to the 1960s in low production. Aura, again, putting out some amazing charts. I linked everything in the description box below. But if we do jump back here from the USDA, spring wheat condition 2021, if you look at the July 25th tally from good to excellent, Idaho is the only state that increased. Look at that, Minnesota dropping, Montana dropping, North Dakota even or a drop. But then we look at the poor to very poor increases. Look at how much percentage that is. 43%, 87%, 69%, 88% in Washington State. American wheat production is, how we say, crushed this year. So the corn area is here as well, because China imports an enormous amount of corn from the States. So the drought is the reddish overlaid on top of the corn growing areas. So again, you can do the math on this, and you look at some of the major producers of corn, i.e. Minnesota, Nebraska, and they're above break even or at the negative for this year. So we'll see how this corn crop turns out. The massive derecho is going to damage a lot of stuff that's rolling through. Also, the EU yield, they're talking a tough game here, but what I see these record floods across Germany, parts of France, all the way into the Netherlands, etc., I don't know how much these crop yields are going to hold, because those are some of the biggest floods, again, in 500 years that have been seen across Europe, and Germany is a major grain producer. So you know this is going to be affected in the future. They might talk a nice game now, but they're going to have to update that July forecast coming in August, and I guarantee those numbers are going to drop in the green. So where does the EU exports pop out for China consumption? They don't. And here's the corn accumulated export sales. And look at that massive spike there, way above the other years. I wonder who's buying all the corn. Do you think? This one off Trade Data Monitor. China's agricultural imports from the U.S., outbound from U.S. to China. Why is that giant spike over there in 2020? Oh, because of the same floods they had last year in the same recurring locations. I bet that's going to go even higher this year in 2021 if the U.S. can provide the food. See, the major producers that China relies on for their imports are also having extreme difficulty growing this year. So looking at China's agriculture imports 2020, look at the corn, the soy, the wheat, the barley, pork, sorghum, sugar, which is going to be up because of Brazil. The only thing that's tapering off there would be the barley. Look at everything else. Wheat, 137% increase. But what if they want to do it again from the United States? That's an impossibility. It's not going to happen. We are at the break-even point on this planet for growing enough food. And when I start to look across the landscape of other countries that could provide for China, Brazilian government warns of frost, corn, wheat, damage to the coffee and the sugar. Then we see Kazakhstan pulling back all animal feed, staying in the country. No more exports. They're having a drought. So that's directly next to, that's a border with China that could supply, but Central Asia, nope, they got to keep it in themselves. So there goes China's other possible 15th, 16th down the line, possible backup, gone. And North Korea facing the worst food shortages in a decade too. Like there's no extra food on this planet right now. And you look at these massive floods in Germany and India and China and Turkey. These are producers as well. They're going to be hitting massive crop losses in India and Turkey. So what's the cause? Well, in my opinion, we need to look out to October of 2024. Earth is going to be between this magnetic sandwich, if you will, of the four gas giants lining up in this configuration that has not occurred since 79 AD. And you talk about long-term cycles here. And we just rolled over into the magnetic field in earnest all the way until it hits its highest point in October of 2024. Jupiter just swung past that line, and you had that 8.2 earthquake in Alaska, and we got all these sinkholes opening up and uplifts in the crust, and all these things are happening. We're getting into that other magnetic field. The effects of these four gas giants on our Earth in between the sun is something to behold. Not widely talked about. Electromagnetic effects through our solar system in play right now. It's going to intensify from every single day. Cataclysm cycles here. Get ready for it any way, shape, or form you can. And you see the supply chains across the planet breaking down. Food is going to be your number one thing along with water, your safety. So what do you have right now stored for food? You're going to want to have something that lasts for a longer period of time. 20-year storable foods in Mylar bags. Perfect. 3-month emergency food supply. Head over to foodwithadapt2030.com. Take a look at what My Patriot Supply has. 6-month, 1-year food supplies. Because it is going to be about the food moving forward. Keep yourself and your family's grand solar minimum prepared. I hope you got something out of the video. This is a giant sign that just occurred on our planet. I wish you the best in your preparations, and I'll see you next time.